With one game left in the regular season, the only thing standing in the way of a playoff berth for Notre Dame is their arch rival, USC. And in the days leading up, the Trojans have become a trendy upset pick by college football pundits. Why is that? And what do the Irish need to do to avoid an upset? That's next on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports. And happy Thanksgiving to those of you tuning in on Thursday, or happy Black Friday if you decided to wait a day. Either way, I'm very happy you're here and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. It is the day of giving, so please take a quick second to hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Really excited about today's show. Friend of the program, Tim Murray from VSiN, makes his return to the program for a deep dive into Notre Dame's matchup with USC. Plus, we break down some potential playoff scenarios if the Irish are able to get this win on the road. Then we revisit our over-under projections from the preseason to see what we got right and what we got wrong. But this was a lot of fun. Enjoy. It's great to have Tim Murray of VSiN back on the show just a few days before Notre Dame takes on rival USC in the regular season finale. Tim and I will both be in attendance for this one, and that's where I want to start. This is obviously a huge game for the Irish with so much on the line, but for USC, this season has been another disappointment, and they have very little at stake, and yet the Irish are only favored by a touchdown according to FanDuel. What jumps out to you as you look at this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. It's easy to say it now with the Army game in the past, but I had former Notre Dame offensive coordinator Mike Sanford on my show. I have him on every week, and we've become really good friends. And he'd be okay with me putting him on blast because I told him that I thought, and we were talking in early October, that Notre Dame would slip at some point. Now, obviously, they have not since the Northern Illinois game, but he said it would be one of the academies. And I said, there's no way. I didn't see it happening. And he thought it would be Army. He doubled down last week before the game, and obviously a combined score of 100-28. So as this kind of started to play out, I said all along, knowing the way that I bet and look at lines, this game would be a relatively short line in the eyes of your general person out there. And people listening to this podcast would say 7.5 seems very short, and I understand why. Notre Dame's been destroying teams. And USC has not been playing all that well on the road. They lost to Minnesota. They lost to Maryland. But let's look at some of their home games, right? I mean, they should have beaten a Penn State team that Notre Dame is going to be very much in the discussion with of where they ultimately are ranked. So, USC at the end of the day, and I think this was mentioned on another podcast. I think it might have been, with O'Malley and Priester and John Bryce, where Army and Navy are very, very, very well coached. They have a unique scheme, all of that. But the level of athlete is not there. The level of athlete is there on USC. They just haven't been able to put it together. So I think that's your concern. And then lastly, let's just look at history, man. Like 2012, that wasn't fun. 22-13, thanks to Lane Kiffin for, I remember what he threw it on 3rd and 4th and goal or something like that got Notre Dame the victory. And then 2018, boy, that was not fun either. So this is, we saw it last week, Tyler, where the pressure starts to set in. The pressure was there for Alabama. Hey, man, all you got to do, got to win out. You're in the SEC championship. You're in the playoff. Well, they lost to Oklahoma by 3 touchdowns as a 14-point favorite. Hey, Ole Miss, all you got to do, just win out. You're going to the college football playoff. Went on the road, lost to Florida as a 13-point favorite. Notre Dame's only a 7.5-point favorite. So, that's kind of telling you something about this game. Do I think Notre Dame will lose? Of course not. But am I worried? Of course. I mean, this is a win and in situation. And, you hear the old saying, it's probably overused, Tyler, but what's the worst thing of an underdog? Just letting them hang around, giving them hope. And I think that's what Notre Dame needs to eliminate quick. Come out like they did against Army, punch them in the mouth, take an early lead, and then maybe you see a USC team quit. You let them hang around, things are going to get pretty tight in the Coliseum on Saturday.
I agree with everything you just said, and I'm still nervous about this game given the history of disappointing performances by the Irish in the Coliseum. But if you look at the very recent history, and by that I mean Notre Dame's 8-2-1 record against the spread this season, maybe we should expect the Irish to roll in this one, and maybe we should have a little bit more confidence because they have given us every reason to be confident, really, since like the Miami of Ohio game. That was ugly, but then ever since then, this team looks completely different, and they've basically been playing with their hair on fire every single week. So if this Notre Dame team were to blow out USC, what do you think will be the biggest reason why?
Well, I think they're just the way they're playing. I mean, the defense is unbelievable right now. And I think the physicality, watching that game from my couch on Saturday night and seeing Marcus Freeman when talking to Catherine Tappan, and was it violence or something? Yeah. Violence. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
It felt like Kirby Smart before the national championship with TCU, which is good to see. We haven't always seen that from Freeman.
And I think the mentality that Marcus Freeman has taken, I don't know about you, Tyler, but I was thinking about this the other day. I feel like we've got a new Marcus Freeman. I feel like we've got an MF Marcus Freeman. He's an MFer right now. Like he's got this new sense of like, I get it. I'm cool. I got cool shoes and I'm a young dude, but right now I want to kill you. And like, that's what you kind of need from these elite coaches. And I'm not saying Marcus Freeman is elite yet. Could he get there? Hopefully that is the case. But it just, since that NIU game and since this team has kind of gotten it going, there's this mentality that he has shown where it was the Virginia game. He was mad. Like he was pissed off. And I'm like, okay, this is something we haven't seen from him yet. And this is, I'm not trying to throw shade on Brian Kelly because Brian Kelly, obviously LSU fans aren't happy with him, but I think for the most part, Notre Dame fans have to be relatively happy, the consistency. But he used to always say, like, winning's hard. That's true. Winning is hard. But Marcus Freeman feels like he's taken it to another level where they want to rip your soul out. And the way the defense is playing continues to be so impressive. So to answer your question, very long-winded, why do they win in impressive fashion? Because they punched this USC team in the mouth and they're like, I'm good. We're 6-5. This year sucked. I'm out. I'm not ready for this. And I think that's what Notre Dame needs to do from the jump. They need to show that they're not a team playing tight to make it to the playoff. They're a team continuing to build off of the ass whoopings that they've thrown out there this last, 2-month stretch.
I'm with you on Freeman. And it's interesting because I'm not sure when the switch flipped exactly, because I actually did not like what he was saying to the media and his demeanor on the sideline in the immediate aftermath following the loss to Northern Illinois. He had some weird comments before Miami, and it didn't really seem like he had that swagger back until really after the bye week. But you're right, over the course of like the last month or so, it has been a different Marcus Freeman, a more intense Marcus Freeman, and someone who's not satisfied with anything other than perfection, which is a great place to be. And I heard Bo Collins was talking to the media last night, said that they've been running the Notre Dame USC game in 2022 throughout the Goog all this week. I love that they're leaning on any source of motivation for this one. But this is still a USC team you mentioned. They have a bunch of athletes on the field. They have a new quarterback in a way. Jaden Mayava has started the last 2 games for the Trojans. I would say he looked good against Nebraska, okay against UCLA, but going up against Notre Dame, there really hasn't been one quarterback all season long that has had success against this defense. But is there a matchup or a player on USC that concerns you the most?
I mean, Zachariah Branch is always going to scare you. That dude is special, and he has not had the year that I think I expected him to have. Just a unique, explosive talent. Mekhi Lemon. Look, at the end of the day, what we've seen, Tyler, from this cornerback unit stepping in and really not skipping a beat when your All-American is lost for the year, USC is the team that has the potential to challenge that. And when you look at the quarterback, it's funny. I've been having former USC quarterback Cody Kessler on my shows, and we talked to him prior to the change. and then right before the UCLA game. And he just felt like Maeva fits Lincoln Riley a little bit more than Miller Moss did. He's got some mobility. He can, move the pocket. He can scramble. The thing about Notre Dame and what they've done so well this year is obviously turning folks over. And Jaden Maeva, you saw it in the Nebraska game. You saw it all at his time at UNLV. He has a propensity to turn the ball over and put it in harm's way. So I do think Notre Dame, especially with the way that Xavier Watts is playing right now, I think there's going to be an opportunity out there to turn over Maeva. But what scares you is that he is a dynamic athlete. He can get out and run. He's going to make your linebackers work. And, Notre Dame taking a ding to their depth this week with KVA being out for this contest. So you're down a little bit more. Does KVA affect win-loss? No, but you keep seeing it happen, right, with this Notre Dame team where you lose Botello, you lose Traore, you lose Morrison. Now you lose KVA for this game. Who knows the status of Howard Cross? I know he's listed as questionable. Will he go? How close to 100% is he? It just takes its toll, right? And Notre Dame, to their credit, obviously, Tyler, has done an amazing job where you look at Heinisch stepping in and how well he has played. You look at the offensive line, as makeshift that has been this year, and how well they've played to this point. But, that's certainly the worry you have, because there are guys in that USC uniform that are very, very talented. And would Zachariah Branch start at Notre Dame? Absolutely. Would Mekhi Lemon start at Notre Dame? Yes. So there are some unique players, and they've got a good running back too. I mean, when, you got Woody Marks, could he, have some big gains? It's certainly possible. I thought UCLA did a pretty good job. I'm just pulling up the game log again. Yeah, UCLA did a pretty good job of slowing him down, but he had a $146 on the ground against Nebraska, a $123 against Washington. He's a very capable running back. So why this game could be close? They got dudes, man. They're not a very good team, but they do have talented players, and they certainly have the ability to make this thing competitive.
Woody Marks certainly scares me. I think he'd have even better numbers this season if Lincoln Riley just decided to give him the ball more. I know that's been a big complaint from USC fans, but you look at his numbers this year, 1,100 rushing yards, averaging 5.7 yards per carry. And if the Notre Dame defense has been vulnerable to anything, it's been the run when they're looking to prevent explosive plays in the pass game. I don't know how Al Golden is going to scheme it up this week against USC. I mean, obviously last year, they didn't have that many problems going up against Caleb Williams. They had him and Lincoln Riley in a pretzel all game long, and that was Caleb Williams' worst game in college. And that was before we got used to seeing Caleb Williams not playing that good of football like he has been for the Bears this season. But it's going to be a really interesting matchup in this one, and I just think as long as Notre Dame is able to stop the run, that will go a long way. Tim is going to be right back here with us in a moment to revisit some of our over-unders from the preseason, and I got to admit, we did pretty well, all things considered. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about a really cool promotion courtesy of our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All right, so we have been on the struggle bus as of late, but we need to get back in the win column, and in order to do that, we are going to take Ravens -3 at home against the Eagles on Sunday. So much great football this weekend. I think this is the game of the weekend, and we are going to back the Ravens -3 in that matchup. And for more, visit FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now I want to switch it to some of the over-unders that you and I did before the season. We're going to revisit some of those and just talk about some key players for Notre Dame this year. It's funny because when you and I talked before the season, you were much higher on Riley Leonard than I was. But after all the peaks and valleys that Leonard has experienced this season, I have somehow become one of Leonard's biggest defenders. And looking back at our over-under projections from the beginning of the season, we both took the under on passing yards, which was 2,525. Looks like we're safe there. But take me through your timeline and belief in Leonard as this season has gone along until now.
Yeah, that's a complicated question. I was all in on Leonard. I talked myself much more into him than I did, Sam Hartman, and I was in on Sam Hartman too. So maybe that's just the fanboy in me. But I was expecting Riley Leonard to get much better as the year has gone on, and that's bared out now. Where there are worries, 100%. When you think about, I still don't know what was going through his head on the interception against Northern Illinois. I don't know. I'll never know.
The answer is nothing.
Yeah. He tried to force a play that just makes no sense. Now, I do have a theory. I have a theory, Tyler, that if Notre Dame won against Northern Illinois 14-13, I still think they're 10-1. I don't know who they would have lost to. I just think that edge came in because of the Northern Illinois loss. So whether that's crazy or not, that's just the way that I think. Maybe they'll lose to Louisville or whoever it may have been. But regardless, they're 10-1, and that is that. But I think where I started to kind of get back in on Riley Leonard was, I don't know if it was the Louisville game, but you're starting just to see that comfort level where he's hanging in the pocket a little bit longer. And, that opening drive, and I get it. Army, their secondary is not going to be anywhere compared to a secondary that they're more than likely facing this weekend. But I love the fact that he went through his progressions, had a little kind of drop down in his arm angle against Army, which I thought was interesting. But, he's trusting in his receivers a little bit more. I am surprised as the year's gone on that Mitchell Evans has not been kind of that go-to guy once he's been fully healthy, which I believe he's finally gotten to. But I think what's impressed me lately has been there hasn't been like Book to Claypool, right? Like that became such a go-to, like obvious. Like he is clearly building relationships with a number of other receivers. Faison gets the touchdown, against Army on the opening drive. You see Harrison, step in for Greathouse last 2 weeks ago against Virginia when he gets a little bit banged up. Greathouse gets it banged up. Greathouse, clearly a guy that, there's a rapport building there. Bo Collins, I feel like the relationship or the connection they had early on the year has waned a little bit. Maybe that's something to do with some of the drops that he's had. But I don't know if there was a perfect time when I kind of went back in, but like the Northern Illinois game, the Miami first half, you're like, oh my God, like this is going to happen again. You're getting booed there in South Bend. I'll say this, and this is no knock on Steve Angeli, but I think you and I were texting a lot prior to the Purdue game. And I wasn't ready for them to turn to Steve Angeli. I'm like, they've built this offense around Riley Leonard heading into this year. You got to let it play out. And look, if they had lost to Purdue, maybe that would be a little bit different. But yeah. I as the season has gone on, you got to remember, and I'm not trying to make excuses here, the dude missed all of spring. And you got a new offensive coordinator. And it feels like right now, with the dynamic backfield of Love and Price, with his legs, the wide receivers feeling a little bit more comfortable, this is what you wanted to see from this offense. Is he going to miss some layups? Sure, and he has. And Virginia, he missed some layups, right? But for the most part, he's done a much better job. And the proof's in the numbers, right? His touchdown numbers are way up after the slow start to the year. So I think there's clearly a comfort level for him in the pocket. And, he's not needing to use his legs as much as he has in the past. But the beauty is he still can use those legs, which I'm sure he'll need, whether it be this weekend against USC or definitely if they're hosting a playoff game.
For me, that first offensive drive for the Irish against Louisville was so critical, not only for Leonard, but really that entire unit, because Notre Dame gives up the touchdown basically immediately when they fumble the opening kickoff. They go down 7-0. It's a ranked opponent. Big game. This is their first real chance to start making up for that loss in Northern Illinois. They go right down the field. Riley Leonard's rolling out of the pocket, hitting guys on time, connected with Jane Thomas on a big fourth down. I thought that was so crucial for him in this season. And then they go into the bye week, and then coming out of that, it looked like a completely different offense going up against Stanford. They passed the ball a lot more, especially in the early downs. They were a lot more aggressive in that one. I think that the Riley Leonard that we have seen since that moment has been completely different than the one we saw at the beginning of the year. So I'm really happy with where he is at now. Obviously, he does need to improve things with his accuracy. You mentioned it. He's going to miss some layups. That's going to happen, but he's also going to stress the defense in a way that most quarterbacks can't with his legs. And I actually think we're going to see a lot more of Riley Leonard running the ball this weekend against USC, not just at the goal line when they're trying to pound their head against the wall. I don't know what they were doing because Riley Leonard barely ran in that game outside of that, but I'm happy with where he is at. I'm also very happy with Jeremiah Love. So before the season, I set the number at 900 for Jeremiah Love for rushing yards because I could not find an actual count. He currently sits at 850. Ooh. And look, that feels like we're going to hit, but I don't even think the stats tell the full story of just how good he has been for this team.
Oh, I mean, I always try not to be a prisoner of the moment. And while I pride myself on knowing a lot about Notre Dame history, I'm not going to say, he's the best and most exciting running back since ... Look, Audric Estime was a record-setting running back just a year ago, but I think most of us would say he's just a different level. Like Audric Estime was a battering ram, and he's that bully that you want. When he hits the hole, it's just, it's night, and it's just another level. And to your point, 850 yards, like if he continues to play at this level, he'll eclipse 1,000 because Notre Dame at minimum has 2 games left. But the fact that, and I know we can get frustrated, with Dylan McCullough and his rotations. You're like, why isn't Jeremiah Love in there? I think there's a method to his madness. I mean, he's been doing this a long time. And I have to imagine, Tyler, heading into this game, it feels like Jeremiah Love's legs are fully fresh, right? And they've got Price, they've got Williams, Ford's been banged up. And, honestly, we don't really want to see Ford out there all that much. But it feels like when you've got Price and Love in this rotation, and he's had 120 carries or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that's great for him, knowing that he's a sophomore, knowing that, he's going to be fresh. And I give credit to McCullough, but my God, man, this dude, he's on another level. And I think we all saw it at flashes last year. And, I think we want it all the time, but it's, there are running backs and for example, I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but like Bryson Daly for Army has run the ball 70 times over the last 2 weeks. Like that dude's probably just sitting in an ice bath right now. I don't think Jeremiah Love had 7 carries last week and he went for $130 and including a explosive touchdown. Like it feels like you want him to get the ball more, but it almost feels like they're just holding him back for when they need him to explode. And thankfully, as we saw week 1, against Texas A&M, the other guy doesn't stink either in Price, right? He can make some big plays too. And I'll say this too about Price. I feel like as the year has gone on, him hitting the hole, like Jeremiah Love hits the hole, gone, right? Like he's exploding through it. Price kind of danced a little bit. And I feel like as the year has gone on, I don't know about you, Tyler, but I felt like he's kind of hit the hole a lot more than dancing as he did started in the beginning of the year.
Without a doubt. And the fact that Love is this fresh at this point of the season is so huge for Notre Dame. I mean, he was only out there for 14 plays total against Army, and he had 3 touchdowns, which is insane.
He's got 2. I mean, look, we all think about the Logan Diggs leap at UVA, like, oh, that was a cool play, right? He scored 2 touchdowns where he's leapt over a person. Like, that's the craziest thing, right? Was it Northern Illinois where he leapt over and I think that I try not to bring it up, but I know it gets brought up all the time. Like I did a radio hit earlier today where, it was a Penn State host. So he's like, they lost to Northern Illinois. I'm like, I get it. It is what it is. It's a terrible loss. And there's so many things about that game. What may be even more maddening about the NIU loss was not the Leonard touchdown. It was that the interception. It was after the Love hurdle into the end zone. I don't think he carried the ball again the rest of the game.
Nope. Yeah, that's a different story. So now
many years, lifetimes ago there in early September.
As Notre Dame is beating the crap out of teams, totally fine with Jeremiah Love not getting the ball that much. It's so crazy, too. You think about, like, I know some fans are like, oh, if he had been getting Ashton Genty's workload, then he would be in the Heisman conversation. Like, you should not want that. Let's look at Genty's game log the past few games. Wyoming, he only had 19 carries. Before that, San Jose State, 32. Nevada, 34. San Diego State, 31, 33, 31.
No thanks.
That's the only reason Boise State is in this position is because they have to lean on him. Notre Dame doesn't have to do that. And for that reason, they're in a really good spot. But for Riley Leonard rushing yards, I set the number at 803. That's how many rushing yards Brandon Wimbush had as the starting quarterback back in 2017. He's at 671, so it's not impossible, but it's certainly unlikely. But what do you make of the way that they have utilized Leonard in the run game this year?
Well, and I think the good thing about it is let's look at his numbers on the ground lately. 30 against Army, 32 against UVA. He had the big run against Florida State, right? A 34-yard touchdown run. But you don't need him as much as you did on the ground the first 5 games of the season. 12, 11, 11, 12, 13 carries. This is a good thing. You want him in that 7-8 carry a game range where you're keeping the defense, in the back of their mind, but you want him maturing as a quarterback. So to be honest, like 803 right now, as you mentioned, he's sitting at 671. He probably will pass that. Hopefully he does, but I hope that he passes it going for 40 yards in the next 3 games, as opposed to needing to go for 60 yards in 2 games and they're losing in the first round.
I agree with you. Sometimes there's a part of me, even during that Army game, when you're watching Army run the triple option, and I'm just thinking, like, what if Notre Dame just ran a shotgun triple option with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price? Like, who would be able to stop that? The one thing with Riley Leonard, though, he's got to be a little bit better at protecting his body. You cannot be going airborne. I was getting shades of Jaden Daniels, who might as well be like a crash car dummy the way that he takes hits, and especially the hits that he took at LSU. Riley Leonard cannot be doing that, but I've been really impressed with his legs this year. Okay, these next 2 are tough for me because I set these numbers. We were both on the under, though, so it's okay. Jaden Greathouse receptions at 66. Ooh. He has less than half that with 25. This is the worst one, though. RJ Oben sacks at 6. He currently has 0. But I do think that it leads to a bigger discussion, not necessarily about Oben.
If I remember correctly, I was trending in the right direction because I said Jordan Botello would lead the team in sacks. And then he tore his ACL the second game of the season, but he was trending that way through 2 games.
You were no doubt about that. I mean, that game against Purdue, that half was one of the best halves. That might be the best half of his career. But you're right. You were on it with the Botello thing. I was way off with Jane Greathouse. I was drinking all the Kool-Aid, buying all the Jane Greathouse stock imaginable. I did take the under because 66. I got that number from Chase Claypool back in 2019. So nobody has been able to touch that level of production for a Notre Dame wide receiver in a really long time. But we knew that Notre Dame would distribute the ball a lot amongst the wide receivers and that there probably wasn't going to be a true wide receiver 1. But what do you make of their production as a whole this year? I mean, it's been good to see guys like Faison get in the end zone lately, Greathouse before that. But I don't know. I feel like as a whole, I've been pretty disappointed with that position group.
Yeah, I would agree. And we came into the year with no true 1. And I think that's where they still are. There isn't a number 1 receiver. And I think many of us were hoping that, maybe it was Bo Collins, maybe it would be Greathouse. And I think Greathouse has still the ability and potential to become that next level. Faison's dealt with the ankle injury a little bit. I really thought Jaden Harrison was going to have some big time performances this year. And he was a guy that was kind of off the radar, a specialist we thought coming into this year. And then he just kind of popped in spring. The one that has surprised me a decent amount, and I give him credit because, he's had a new role, was Chris Mitchell, coming in at FIU over 1,000 yards receiving. I thought he had the potential to become like a big time threat. And, it's not all their fault. Obviously, we talked about Riley Leonard early on in the year and the struggles that he had. So they had to not really stretch it vertically. It was more of kind of the quick out type of deal. But I thought we would see more from Chris Mitchell and, Jaden Thomas, man. this dude is just got to be one of the more unsung heroes of this program, because all he does is just block his ass off, doesn't get a ton of production. And I think he's got a year of eligibility left. I hope he comes back, man. He seems like he's a grown-up. He's a great blocker. Hopefully a little bit more production next year, whoever the starter is, whether it be Minchie, Carr, or Angeli, whoever it might be. But, I would say overall, to your point, it has been very underwhelming this year for the wide receivers. But, hey, still got time, and we'll see with the game at USC and then hopefully a home playoff game. This will be a group that maybe makes some big-time plays as the season goes on.
Yeah, and even though they've lacked the production on the season, I really liked what I saw in that game against Army, in that everyone was getting involved. You had
they're bought in, man.
Yeah,
they're
Collins had a bounce-back game. Chris Mitchell had 1 catch, but for 28 yards. Faison had 2, but he scores the touchdown. Jaden Harrison had a couple too. So it was good to see a bunch of guys getting involved here. But now, as we start to wrap things up here, take us through what you're going to be rooting for over the course of these next 2 weeks, because you got 1 week left in the regular season and then the conference championships. And for the audience, we are recording this on Tuesday before the next round of CFP rankings. We aren't sure if Notre Dame is going to be ranked ahead of Penn State. I'm assuming that they won't, but maybe they will be after next week if they end up stomping out USC. We will wait and see. But what are you rooting for as it pertains to Notre Dame and their best case scenario in the college football playoff?
I think the best case scenario, with Alabama and Ole Miss losing, Indiana losing in the fashion that they did, I really think the 6th seed is obtainable. And they do have to jump Penn State, as you alluded to. And I think for Notre Dame, obviously, get the win first. But you got to remember that Penn State went to USC and needed overtime to win that game. And I do think the committee will look at that game, if Notre Dame wins and wins comfortably, as looking at how this team has played down the stretch. I understand that the schedule, unfortunately for the Irish, has gotten lessened. In a perfect world, Texas A&M beats Texas and wins the SEC. That would be lovely, because then Notre Dame has a win over the SEC champ on the road. Also, they would have a head-to-head differentiator between them and Texas, right? Beating Texas A&M on the road, Texas losing there. If you want to get real crazy, let's get Army to win the AAC. That's not crazy to imagine. They're going to the AAC championship to get back into the top 25. But I think for me, it starts with the USC game. Notre Dame, once again, we're taping this on Tuesday. I could sound like an idiot, but I don't think they jump Penn State in this installment of the rankings. I hope I'm wrong. But I do think if Notre Dame beats USC, which will be a comparable data point versus Penn State, I think Notre Dame's in decent shape to jump over Penn State. And then you're looking at a 6th seed. You're facing probably an Indiana, an SMU, maybe the G5 representative, probably not, the Big 12 champion. I just think if you're the 7th seed, you'll still take it, but it's a more challenging first round matchup, where I think you're probably playing like a Tennessee, maybe not Tennessee. I think they might be higher. But then the quarterfinals, not to get too far ahead, would be much more challenging, where you're facing the SEC or the Big 10 champion. If you're the 6th seed, man, you're looking at the ACC champ, which I think you'd very happily take when it's either Oregon, Ohio State on the other side, or you look at, Georgia potentially. So I think it's possible. But at the end of the day, man, having a home playoff game at Notre Dame Stadium on a December, my guess, evening, that'd be something to take in.
It would be something. And one thing on the playoff projections, if Texas does win, Notre Dame really, really needs Texas to then beat Georgia in the SEC championship, because if Georgia wins that game, then Texas and the loser of the Big 10 championship are going to be seated ahead. So that Texas is critical to Notre Dame's playoff success. But before we let you go, give me a score prediction for Notre Dame USC.
Oh, God. I'm a little pessimistic. I think it's not comfortable in the first half. I will say Notre Dame wins 31-24 with USC getting a backdoor cover. There's something about that number that makes me very uneasy. I'm not going to bet the game personally. I'm already home on my my preseason bets on Notre Dame, which I'm happy about. But this game, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. I'll be there. I need to get off the schneid. I had a long winning streak of going to games, and then I was at the Ohio State game last year. So hopefully I'm able to bring the luck for the Irish, and I am proven wrong, and this is a laugher. I would love nothing more. One of my favorite Notre Dame games I've ever been to was Notre Dame Penn State in 2006, when Notre Dame won 41-17. They were up 41-3. And Joe Pa was on the sideline, all frazzled, not knowing what was going on. I want a blowout. I don't want any worry about this one. I want to be mocking people with the fight on sign, but I just have this pit in my stomach that it's a little uncomfortable.
There's a joke there that could have been made. I'll leave it alone. But let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on VSiN. Make sure you check out the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. And then this Saturday, it's going to be a little bit weird. I'm going to be on the road, so I'm not going to do the whole show. But every Saturday, 10 to 1 p.m. Eastern time, check out the VSiN College Football Tailgate Show. I am the host of that program.
All right, man. Thanks so much for doing this. This has been a ton of fun, and I'll see you Saturday.
Yeah, man. Let's go Irish.
That'll do it for today's episode. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're able to spend some quality time with friends and family, but more importantly, I hope you have the freedom to melt on the couch for hours and watch enough football that your eyes bleed. I will be back on Sunday after the Notre Dame USC game. In the meantime, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And if you enjoyed the show today, please give this video a like if you're watching along on YouTube, or rate the podcast 5 stars and leave a review if you are listening to the podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, and go Irish.